All right, sorry for the delay. We've been busy in a peacemaking exercise, which is appropriate for Veterans for Peace. We've had an issue in terms of how we hold people accountable for code of conduct and appropriate behavior in the organization, and how best to present that and to deal with that. And we just had a meeting with some of the people who have a variety of opinions about the best way to proceed. And we came up with kind of a compromise language, and that actually Adrian Kinney, our vice president, offered this language for us, and I'm going to read it now, and then we can have a discussion about it. But this is like not a resolution to be voted on, although people will have opinions about it, and theoretically somebody could appeal it and object to it, appeal it. But this is a position as of now coming from the Veterans for Peace Board of Directors on this issue, which has to do with our friend Tarak, who's kind of well known for having a temper and beyond. The title of this is Supporting a Healthy and Safe Environment Within Veterans for Peace. Where Veterans for Peace is striving to foster a safe and healthy environment within our organization for the benefit of all members as we continue to struggle for peace and social justice. Veterans for Peace has enacted a code of conduct in an attempt to help guide a conversation among our membership about what a safe and healthy environment would look like. A member of VFP, Tarak, has experienced difficulty controlling his anger and has lashed out repeatedly at members and staff over the years. The board of directors has attempted to reach out to Tarak repeatedly to address the impact of his harmful behavior has had on our members for months, to no avail. Whereas the board of directors felt compelled to hold Tarak accountable for his behavior after he lashed out at yet another member of VFP in front of members and supporters, by restricting his membership while he undergoes anger management counseling sessions. And our ultimate goal is to, I take out the whereas there, this was originally written as a resolution, but it's not now. Our ultimate goal is to protect all members and keep one another safe. So we are planning, the board is resolved to take the following steps. One, the board will agree to enter into a mediated discussion with Tarak, pending the outcome of the successful outcome of said mediation, and providing Tarak accepts responsibility for the impact his actions have had on other members, staff, and the organization as a whole, that no restrictions would be imposed on Tarak's membership. And finally, number 3, the code of conduct will be enforced, and all members will be held accountable for their actions as we strive to promote a healthy and safe environment within Veterans for Peace for the sake of our mission and goals as an organization. So that is the position that the board of directors has taken at this time. We actually had been considering imposing some significant restrictions on Tarak at this time. We made some mistakes in our process, and which is one of the reasons we've had some differences about how to proceed and how best to resolve this situation. So here we are, and I think this is we just had a good discussion with several people who are in Tarak's corner, and members of Peace in Our Times board, and as well as Tarak's partner, Ellen Davidson. And we think this is a positive path forward at this time to have a mediated discussion with Tarak, and assuming that all goes well, there would be no restrictions on his membership. And of course, we commit ourselves to continuing these discussions about our code of conduct and ensuring that Veterans for Peace and all of our functions is a safe space for all. And I don't know, Ellen, did you want to respond?
Not so much respond, maybe add.
Okay.
Just comment.
You can come up here if you like.
I'm really glad that we have come to a resolution here that I think we can move forward with, and I think that a mediated discussion is really a valuable way to move forward. And I just want to say that I fully support efforts to make this organization a safe space, and I think there's a lot of work to do, not just in terms of interpersonal behavior, but a lot of things. We had a really great discussion at the end of the resistance mini plenary last night that just kind of came about issues, how younger veterans and veterans of color and women come here, and Brittany DeBarros and Deidre Cobb and Herb, I'm sorry, I don't know your last name, made some really great points, and I think those are the discussions that will really move us forward. I also think that individual behaviors, including Tarak's, we need to hold people accountable for individual behaviors with each other so that it's a safe space, and I fully support Tarak moving toward getting anger management and trying to overcome some of the issues that he has. And I think that these are two different prongs, both of which are very important toward moving us forward toward having a safe space. And I thank the board and the people that we just had a long discussion with for their patience in working this through, and all of you for the long break. I appreciate. Thank you very much for your patience, because I think we came to a better space.
Great. So we're hoping this will be something we can unite around, but we're still going to welcome input and comments from our members here, and I'm sure there's a number of people who have things they want to say. And I'm going to start with Monique Salhab, Paul Cox, and I saw another hand back there. And several hands. We'll get Ellen, make sure to get you all.
Monique Salhab. So my sole purpose of coming to this convention, I was not going to come to this convention. But my sole purpose to come here is to address how people of color, women, trans, queer, are treated. Tarak is a symptom of this organization. He's a symptom of the white supremacist behavior that has existed and how individuals as myself are treated. The fact that none of the individuals who have had to deal with him and his abuse or threatening behavior were ever contacted to ever have their information documented. It's hard for me to understand why that was never done. We can talk about moving forward, we can talk about healing, we can talk about reconciliation, but the fact remains is that harm was done. Harm continues to be done. How can an organization talk about healing and reconciliation and move forward when harm continues to be done? In the work that I do in Albuquerque, New Mexico, working with Native, Indigenous, people of color, and queer and trans folk, we talk about stopping harm. So we can gather once a year, we can put on t-shirts and buttons and claim that we are an organization of Veterans for Peace and wonder why we have no younger veterans on the board or women of color. There is a reason for that, because it is not a safe space here. It is not a culture where we feel safe, where we are honored, where we can be heard. I spent 3 years on this board with 2 men as president who consistently found ways to dismiss things that were brought up, that we were dealing with, that we brought forth as concerns, that we asked be dealt with. There is a reason why I did not run for the board again. There is a reason why Monisha Rios stepped down from the board. There is a reason why you see the makeup of the board as it is. So I ask, what is the leadership of this organization that is made predominantly of white men? And then the white so-called progressive feminists who continue to prop up and support the continued harm, support the continued white privileged behavior to create a continued environment of exclusion, and then dismiss those of us who are so-called young vets as using labels or not doing the work or causing distraction. It is about decolonizing our behavior. It is about decolonizing our work. We cannot truly come together and talk about peace and justice if we are not committed, and I say we, but what I mean by the white leadership truly willing to take up a mirror and look at yourselves and your actions to see how you have benefited from the constructs that exist. So, you know, the women of color that come through here, I spoke with one who said that immediately was approached to be on the board, and the only reason, even though it wasn't said, was because she is a woman of color. The only reason I was on the board was because I was a woman of color. When I attended my first convention 5 years ago in Asheville, I was immediately approached and asked to be on the board, not knowing who I am, what I am about. And the fact that that is the approach that this organization has to looking at myself, to looking at Daniel Craig, to looking at Monisha Rios, to looking at any woman or woman of color that walks through these doors of this convention year after year after year. And I ask, how is that just? How is that not tokenizing? This organization has perfected the art of tokenism because that's who we represent to you. We are tokens to you because you are not interested in actually hearing about the work that needs to be done, about what we see and experience. So that's why I say Tarak Koff is a symptom, because he is. He does not represent. He represents the symptom which exists within this organization. So my question is that Garrett, who is the new executive director, I ask, as a white man, are you willing to help rip the Band-Aid off? To help shift this culture of colonization to decolonization, to examine, because that's what needs to happen. And it doesn't need to happen from just top down, it needs to happen laterally as well. So I honestly cannot tell you if I want to be a continued presence in this organization. I honestly cannot tell you if I will help my 2 chapters in Albuquerque, Santa Fe, organize this convention, because I too have to deal with the colonization there. And I can tell you that in the work that I do there with communities, we choose how we deal and ask white individuals to come into our circle. We ask that if they come into our circle, that they are committed to doing the work. So why do I want to be a part of an organization that overwhelmingly wants to prop up white men and white harm and not do the work?
Jerry,
not up.
I'll just ask the
You're
question.
not up, Vic. You got about 5 or 6 people before you. Sorry.
I don't know what you're talking
I
about.
already got a list of like 5 people who had their hands up earlier. And then now you're on it. Sorry.
Jared, just explain if you're taking a stack or
Okay.
if people are coming to the mic or
Okay, I
how
am
you're doing
taking
it.
a stack. I'm going to call on people. With the next couple of people are Paul Cox, this gentleman in black in the T-shirt in the back, and then Ellen Barfield. And then got a
I
couple
just have a
more.
procedural question, because I don't know what mediated discussion means. Is there a better definition of that? Do you have a mediator?
Well, we'll have to have a mediator.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you haven't selected one?
No.
Okay, so that's pretty undefined at this point. Okay, that's fine.
No, yeah.
But there will be a mediator, neither from the board nor from whatever, Tarak's corner, whatever. There will be an outside mediator.
A neutral
Maybe
and
not even
skilled
from
mediator.
VFP.
Thank you. Okay, sir? Brian, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Sparks. I live in Oakland, Berkeley. It's a great place. We talk about process and procedure, but I think we all know what that means because we've all been through processes and procedures. If you violate the rules of engagement in a combat zone, a little bit closer. Violate the rules of engagement, you get somebody who investigates you and finds it, in fact.
Please, closer to the mic or something.
Can you hear me? Is this a lot better? Should I start over? I apologize for the delay. All right, so we've all talked about processes and procedures, and I just don't think it's the real issue. I think process and procedure covers up the real issue. We've all been on the receiving end of processes and procedures, or we've been on the other side of processes and procedures, right? If I violate the rules of engagement in Iraq and somebody investigates me, do you know what they're going to find? I didn't do anything wrong. And that's a pattern. You saw it in Vietnam. You saw it in Afghanistan. You saw it everywhere we've been. They're going to find you did nothing wrong. And then they're going to say, but these are the rules of engagement. Go back to the rules of engagement. And what happens if you break that a second time? Nothing happens. So that's my struggle with this idea that we're going to have a process, a mediated conversation. That's the problem I have with it. The other problem I have with it is this country is founded on something like 500 years of breaking the process and procedures, the treaties that we'd set in place. We'd break it, and then we'd just put it in place again. When we talk about decolonize this organization, that's what we're talking about. We as a country, I know not everyone's included in this, but as a country, we set up treaties. We break the treaties. We put in the new treaty. We break that treaty. Put in the new treaty. We break that treaty. 500 years or 500 treaties. And we're still doing it. I mean, we're still putting pipelines through I won't go there.
So Brian, to keep it brief, though.
I'll keep it brief. Thank you. That's the problem I have with it. I just see this as a kind of a bullshit process. It's there to cover up the harm that was caused to other people. Members of our organization were hurt, and this is a cover-up. So that's all I got. Thanks.
All right. Ellen and then Bernie. Where'd it go? Oh, yeah.
Yes to almost all of what both the previous speakers said. Yes, this largely white, largely male organization needs to be called on a long history. And yes, absolutely, Tarak is a symptom, not a cause or the embodiment of the problem. And I hear you with distrusting any process that is set up. Yeah, the one we know the most is the military cover-ups. I sincerely hope this one won't be that way. But knowing a good bit of what went into this specific situation, the process wasn't followed. There is a process and it wasn't followed. And Tarak is only a symptom. Does anybody here think he's the only person in this organization that has an anger problem? I mean, please. I've gone around with Tarak quite a few times. Yes, that behavior is problematic and has to stop. And it's a lot of us, it's not just him. And to suspend the paper, which was what was proposed for a while, would be shooting the organization in both feet and both hands and both eyes, frankly. That would have been idiotic. So let's get a handle on this, let's work on it. It isn't going to be fixed anytime soon. It's been 500 years. It isn't going to be fixed in one process. But this process now, I think, is the right decision. And please, young folks, people of color, women, I certainly have called the organization on some of its shit, but I'm right in the middle of some of its shit too, obviously. Please keep calling us on it. Please keep with us if you can, and if you can't, I understand. It's a work in progress, that's all we can say. And I think this decision is the right one now. Thank you.
Okay, I've got about five or more people, including Bernie, and then Michael McPherson, and then I'll keep writing all your names: John Spitzberg and Pete Doctor and Susan Snow. And Brittany. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll have you speak next, sister. I heard you already had your hand up for a while. Sorry about that.
Hi, this is Bernie Eisenberg from the LA chapter. I'm going to not speak about any of the personal matters that just came up. I'm going to speak about a different issue which I think has not been addressed, and it's more structural than personal. So what I've personally experienced structurally within the organization is that certain people, and Tarak among them, have taken the reins and have decided who will do what, who will go where, how trips are organized. And so that's what I want to speak about. This is an issue I think the board has to deal with, a structural issue, which you haven't. You've dealt with the personal matters that came up with anger management. So I'm just requesting that you look at that issue. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. No, not right now. Well, I don't know. Excuse me. In the back there, I'm sorry I don't know your name, but you're up if you want to speak. Natasha?
Thank you, yes.
Thank you, Natasha.
Hey, good afternoon. How y'all doing? Good. Many of you all don't know me. I'm Natasha from the Chicago chapter, 20-year Air Force veteran, and I retired in February 2016. And so I'm really excited to be here. It's my first convention. But I'll tell you that within 2 minutes of Monique coming over and talking to me, I immediately know what she was talking about. Immediately. She didn't even have to tell me her story because I knew it already. I knew it already, but because I have been in these spaces, I remember many of you in this tone when we wore boots together, and it is beyond time. It shouldn't be a work in progress. Time is up. So in a real way, it's deeper than anger management. And I know that. I spent my last 5 years on active duty in the Air Force Special Operation Command. It isn't just racism, it's deeper than that, right? So if it's anger management and that's what you see, imagine when it is on me, Monique, and any other person of color, or any other person that you can otherize for not being a white body in front of you, right? And so when I say it is time up, because we went through all this training when we were on active duty together. We know what this is about. So we can no longer pretend that we don't know what this is like. You don't have to be black to know what it feels like because you benefited from it. There are people who got promoted based on my work, and a lot of you can probably resonate with that. Maybe not today, but going forward. And so when we talk about that this isn't just a personal issue, This is not just about anger management. It is about the implicit biases, the micro insults, the microaggressions, and that neoliberalism like output on social justice. It is not enough. And so I feel like in a real strong way that until we address this as veterans, the movement is less powerful. So you should feel agitated a little bit today to do something about it. And I'm not talking about mediation. I've sat in those rooms with my racist commander and it didn't move him. Okay, so it is not enough to do that. And for all of you who asked me to, I'm excited. So I'm gonna take my time for a minute. Who asked me to sit on this board, I have to decline that. Because until Veterans for Peace becomes intentional about making spaces for Black and brown and other folks, right, or other marginalized folk, then I can't sit at this table and be a token for you. And so what I am really asking you, what I'm really asking you to do, and I shared this with Garrett, you really have to be intentional and want to do this work. And until you move in the direction that I feel like makes all of us feel empowered to be here, the harder it's going to be to attract and retain people that look like me. And you won't get the wins that Brittany talked about yesterday, period. Thank you.
I'm getting a lot of really great input here. I've got still another half dozen people at least with their hands up, and I've got a bit of a list here. And next was going to be, is Michael McPherson in the house? Yeah. There you are. And then Vic, and then Joe, and then Dan Shea.
Thank you.
I got him here. He's next.
So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to say. I guess it's disappointing in many ways that this is where we are as an organization after all this time that I've been trying to move it in a more positive direction. And again, as I said the other day, you know, you all do good work. We do good work. But in order to do it to the best that we can, these changes have to happen. And this is not the first time I said it. Wasn't the other day. I've been saying it for years. But we didn't have a critical mass of people who were willing to agitate you in a way that you didn't have any choice. Like you have to really make a decision. And that's what happens. You invite people in and you start to see new faces, new colors, a gender spectrum, and you start to think, oh wow, we're becoming diverse, you know, we're changing who we are. But as long as the people go along and stay in the stream and don't disrupt, you know, everything's all right. But if you're not changing as they come in, then it's not really all right. So this is where we are. And I hope you understand. I mean, I've been asked, and I've said this before too. This is sort of funny because I'm saying the same things I've said before, but maybe you hear it in a new way now, right? I've been asked many times by people of color who've decided not to work with white people, how do you do it? And, you know, I mean, I don't know what explanation to give. You all good people and you mean the best. And I know it's hard to change. I mean, I'm a man. It's not like I'm not doing fucked up stuff as a man. So, which I've said before, right? But one thing I've learned is I gotta listen. Even if I disagree, I gotta listen. I gotta take it. And sit with it. So that's what we're asking. And we want you to know that if we didn't care, like those people of color asked me, how do you do it? We just wouldn't be here. I mean, it's really that simple. I don't need to be in Veterans for Peace. I mean, I do. That's why I'm here. But I don't have to because I got plenty of stuff to do, which I said 5 years ago before Michael Brown was killed. When peace at home, peace abroad, when we first talked about that, right? Because there's all kinds of stuff happening in my community as a black person. I could just be there. But I want to work across the spectrum of issues. I've always been that kind of person. So that's what I do. And before I come to any one of you and say, hey, I think you've done something that hurts me as a black person or a woman, I consider it. It's not like I just jump up and talk about it. And I want you to know that each person of color or anyone that's an oppressed person that chooses to be in a space with you, they think about what they're going to say before they say it. They just don't react to you. They think about it because they're trying to be in community. And they know that if every time I said something, when somebody does something, I'll be saying something all the time. So I need to think about when I should say something, so I'm making a strategic decision that's going to make a difference. And then what happens is you get this crazy ass reaction. Like I hadn't even thought about this. Telling me I don't know what I'm talking about. And you don't understand, it's like, this is a trip. How could I not know what I'm talking about, but I've been thinking about this for damn 2 or 3 weeks? You know? So I just really, really need for you, especially if you're feeling uncomfortable and like you're getting beat up on, you really need to understand that. It's really, really important because that's where people are coming from. They're not coming from a place to hurt you. We're coming from a place to make all of us better. We're coming from a place of transformation. We're not coming from a place to try to take anything from you. We're coming from a place to give you something, to give all of us something. Now, one of the things that really angers me the most about this situation with Tarak is, number one, everybody that knows Tarak knows that there is some issue that needs to be addressed. And I understand that the board didn't do a good job, and I put myself in there in terms of the process. Okay. But I've very seldom heard anyone talk about, well, what are we going to do to deal with what happened? It was all about Tarak being treated fairly. That's the problem. If you came to us or me, or when I got in conversations with people about everybody being treated fairly and said, well, I'm not going to go along with the decision because of the process, but guess what? I got an idea about how we can deal with the whole thing, then that would make more sense, and I thought you'd give a damn about the people who've been hurt. But to me, it just felt like mostly that wasn't the issue. It was just about Tarak. And I want you to understand, because I'm going to go on, but I think I need you to understand some parallels, some important parallels. Now, when a person does something to a person, and the person who's been hurt tells people about it, right? And it's kind of people kind of know. And then the person that does the harm goes off and gets to do all kinds of things, and everybody's like, oh, this person is wonderful. The person that's hurt is like, well, what about me? You know, why is the pain that I feel doesn't seem to mean anything? Is it because this person is doing all this great and wonderful stuff, so they get a pass and they can treat everybody like shit? Is that what that is? What about if it was a person who's not doing great and wonderful things and hurt somebody, and you tell, you know, this person hurt me, and next thing you know, that person who's not doing great things, they seem to get in trouble, or they seem to get a little bit alienated. But the one who is doing great and wonderful things seems to be able to get away with stuff, right? So when you're an activist organization, the currency that we have is our activism. That's our currency. The person who's doing great activism, we respect. In the corporate world, in the capitalist system, the person who's making the money, the person who's bringing the money into the corporation, that's the currency, money. That's who they respect. So that person can get away with things. If I'm a salesperson and I'm not bringing money in, but I'm acting like an asshole, guess what? I get fired, right? If I'm a football player and I'm a great football player and we're winning and I abuse my wife, I might get to stay on the team. But if I'm not doing too good, I'm getting ready to get kicked off, traded, right? Yeah, or take a knee, same thing, right? As long as I'm making the money, it's all good. We winning, it's all good. So this is the parallel. That's what we're talking about when you have to look at the structures and how it shows up between us. And that's what is going on. And so Tarak is just a symptom, yes. It's the structure. And and once again, just looking at Peace in Our Times, there was no decision by the board not to have Peace in Our Times. The decision was if Tarak was going to be editor, couldn't be editor, and the Peace in Our Times said, well, we can't do it without him, which isn't true because we could figure it out. We could figure it out. Peace in Our Times is not more important than the people who've been hurt. Okay? And I guess lastly, please understand that in order for us to be who we want to be and to build the world that we want, we've got to figure, or at least, okay, I'm not going to say figure it out because it's real hard to figure it out, I know, but we have to be really trying really hard and making change. We got to change. That's what it is. Because as I said the other night, you tear down the structures, but the peaceful and justful world is just going to spring up. That's the thing. It's just not going to, because if it was just going to spring up, that's what would have happened. Okay? And that's not what happened, is it? So in order for it to happen, we have to build it. Okay? So just remember, this is out of love. This is a call in. And some people are calling us out right now, like on Facebook. Now understand this. The person tried to call in first. Calling in means come to you, talk to you, help you understand how I feel. But any one of you have been in a situation where when someone didn't listen to you, right, then what do next? Either you go somewhere, and I don't want to have nothing to do with you, or you go off. And so some people decide to go off because no one wanted to listen to the call in. So we have to call each other in, and when I get called in, we got to listen, and we got to work at it, okay? That's all I'm saying.
So this is a really important discussion, and I've got a good stack of people, so we'll keep on going. If I call you a little bit out of order, that's because I want to make sure that we're getting as many women's voices in there as possible and not having 5-10 men speak in a row. So right now I'm going to, and also the other thing, somebody suggested that not everybody's been identifying themselves, so please say your name and your chapter before you speak. And I add in you, Mike. And then what I've got on stack right now is after Vic, then Joe Acevedo, and then Susan.
And I'm going to let you in on what exactly has been happening in relationship to Tarak Koff. I loved that man. I loved him from the moment he became my buddy on the board. I looked at him as a mentor. I made it a point to sit next to him, and anytime somebody had something to say against him, I stood up for him. When everything happened in Puerto Rico and I didn't know if my family was alive or dead, he said he had my back. When other people on the board said, helping Puerto Rico is not part of our mission and we're not a humanitarian aid organization. He invited me to go to Okinawa. I went. I went with the mindset that I'm going to learn and I'm going to benefit from the wisdom of my elders who've been doing this work that I'm new to. I'm not new to social movements though, so do not minimize my contribution to this movement. Do not place yourself above me in a way that makes you assume you have any kind of knowledge above me. Now, when I joined the board, my first convention was in Chicago, and I spent a majority of my time listening to members and their pain that had been caused by Tarak. And the fact that for years they had been bringing this up to various iterations of boards. And every single time excuses were made. One of the number one excuses you all like to throw around is PTSD. Oh, I'm a Vietnam veteran, I have PTSD, you just have to let it fly. No. PTSD is not an excuse for abuse. I have PTSD. That doesn't mean I get to act however I want to and get a pass. Neither does he. Neither does a lot of the members that I've received complaints about for yelling and screaming and waving their hands in women's faces, for staking territorial claims over our international chapters and suffocating the life out of the actual people who are in struggle there, so that they can be up front and celebritized and get resources to lord over them and create dependency and colonize the peace movement. None of this is acceptable. So I went with the mindset that I'm also going to pay attention to Tarak Koff, not just as my mentor, but also as someone that I may have to address as a member of leadership in this organization. That I have a responsibility to hold accountable as a leader in this organization. Because that is my ethic. What happened, which the majority of you in this room were not present for, was aside from colonial violence and structural violence and the silencing of people in the Okinawa diaspora who were speaking up against the white saviorism that was going on, and the way that these men, these white men who've been going on all these delegations, lorded over them as if they did not know how to be in their own struggle. These people are not asking for us to save them. They are asking us to be beside them, to be guided by them, to follow their lead. That is what we are supposed to do. When we were in Takae, and I understand Miles had just been arrested, we were all freaking out. We were all stressed. I know Tarak felt responsibility for that. I know I lit him up when he tried to say that Miles went too far. When we were just following our leadership. We were just behaving like Tarak Koff. But what happened in Takae was absolute disrespect for our hosts. In the middle of their presentation about how their land and their people are being actively exploited, he kept interrupting. When another white male asked him to stop, he continued. When Adrian gently asked him again to stop, he went ballistic on her. He was screaming at her, waving his hands in her face, coming at her like he was gonna box her. He embarrassed us all. Not just the people on the delegation, everyone in this organization. He embarrassed Veterans for Peace. You know that when we wear this shirt, we represent everybody in this group. Just like when we wore that uniform, we represented the United States. He had to be pulled away from her because he kept trying to go at her. Is this acceptable to you? Do you really think that this is something that deserves a pass? No. And then what happened after was that other associate members, people in the Okinawan diaspora who also happened to be women, did not want to deal with him. I didn't want to deal with him. Why would we? Why? So we can get screamed at and maybe possibly punched? So I was asked on that bus to address it because it was very clear that nobody else on the delegation, who's Tarak's friend, was going to. Only 2 men said something to him about his behavior. 2 out of the entire group. Everyone else made excuses. Everyone else pat him on the back and said, oh, it's okay, Tarak. Meanwhile, who's taking care of Adrian? Who's taking care of everybody else? It wasn't them. It was me, and it was our Okinawan friends taking care of us. That speaks volumes about you, about what you allow and what you celebrate. And then, He didn't stop there, because I was asked to intervene on behalf of a female associate member who was so afraid of him that she did not even feel comfortable sending him an email. She asked for my help in resolving an issue. And of course I said yes, because that is my responsibility as leadership in this organization, is to take care of our members, not to prop up my friend. Then I became Tarak's target. And any of you that have been Tarak's target know what that's like. That's why so many of you don't step up and say anything to him and stand up to him. That's why you kowtow and coddle his ego. He made it a point to destroy my reputation in this organization. He made it a point to undermine my efforts to create a working delegation to Puerto Rico to actually help rebuild the island. Not in a way where we're going and we're co-opting struggle and we're holding up signs and taking fucking pictures like that's all the work is, but a real working delegation with real solidarity that I as a Puerto Rican wanted and needed from you. And as my people were actively dying, this man thought it appropriate to tell whoever he decided to tell that I was unstable. I started getting phone calls from members I had never met asking about what happened in Okinawa. I heard from Tarak, blah, 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 blah. One member I was working with on electronic voting, when we were in a phone meeting, he asked how I was doing and I said, I'm pretty stressed out. He asked why, and I said, well, the culture in VFP is pretty toxic. I just had an experience in Okinawa that's leaving me pretty depressed. And he decided to say, oh, I heard all about that from Tarak and I don't feel comfortable talking with you about it. I'm his friend. That's called social punishment for anyone who's unfamiliar with that experience. And all this time, I'm hearing from board members that we need to have compassion for Tarak, that we need to take it easy on Tarak. Meanwhile, we are actively exploiting people in Okinawa, and Tarak is a part of that. For example, when we visited the preschool where helicopter parts and Osprey parts are falling on the playground, and we were shown a dent in the tin roof that gave these children shade, Tarak, as we're walking away, says we need to tell them to take us to better places because this isn't dramatic enough, it won't sell papers. Is that acceptable?
No.
How do you think that feels to them? Or do you think about them at all? Or do you only think about your own glory? Or do you only think about selling peace in our times? Or do you only think about Tarak's feelings? Those are the questions I have because that is the experience I have had in the entire time I've been in this organization. Then, after myself being trashed royally and reaching out, actually not just to my peers on the board, but to my fellow members who profess to be my ally as a woman of color, as a Puerto Rican, you're a distraction. You need to focus on the real work. You're too sensitive for this work. I'm Tarak's friend. So yes, Tarak is a symptom. You all have a lot of responsibility in that symptom, and this system. So I'm not just mad at him, I'm mad at you too. I'm mad at getting told that the only reason somebody voted for me for the board was because I have a vagina. And because I'm Puerto Rican. So I check boxes. I'm mad that people who are supposedly my peers treat me like I'm trash. I'm mad that when I give boundaries to people like Tarak Koff and tell him I am not going to allow you to speak to me and to treat me the way that I have watched you treat everyone else, especially Adrian, I get social punishment, I get ostracized. I get talked about in executive board meetings as if I am unstable and delusional because I actually thanked Tarak for the opportunity to grow by going to Okinawa, and then at the same time held his ass accountable, because that makes one unstable. And that president, Barry Ladendorf, at the time said, see, this is evidence that Monisha is unstable. That's right. Check the notes. So those of you who are mad at me for calling your asses out on Facebook, please come talk to me about that. I want to hear why you're so mad. I want to hear why I don't have a right to speak for myself. I want to hear exactly why you think Tarak should have all the fucking privileges of being able to speak his mind and have allyship when the rest of us, and it's not just women and it's not just people of color that he goes after. There are plenty of people, including men, in this organization that he has bullied. Where are you? Where are your priorities, VFP? Where are your ethics? Where are your values? No, I don't think mediation will help. I agree with Natasha. And yes, Ellen, not Ellen Davidson. Honey, I love you. None of this is for you. Ellen, yes, we are going to keep calling you out. But here's the thing. Stop prioritizing your broken processes and your broken procedures that only function in the interest of white supremacy. If you do your historical analysis, you will see that Robert's Rules of Order and all the structural organizational things that make up NPOs in this fucking country are all based on white supremacy. Do your homework on your own time. So when we say this is not enough, it's because it's not enough. When we say that you are focusing too much on your procedures and your processes and your egos, it's because it's true. It's because we need you. When I say we, I mean those of us you are actively exploiting and benefiting from. We need you to step up and have some fucking courage and do what's right. Do what we ask you to. When we need you to step in and be there for us, fucking be there. You cannot do it out in the world if you cannot do it in this organization. You cannot do a march. You cannot do a march that says end these racist wars while you support racist wars in your organization. Because that is what you're doing when you let people like Tarak and Dan Saint and Jan, I can't remember his last name, and all these men who think screaming at women and owning the struggle of other people is acceptable. You are the problem. I'm going to keep calling you out. I'm going to keep inviting you in to meaningful, productive dialogue, publicly, transparently, so that way you are forced to look in the mirror and you are forced to deal with your shit. I love you, Mo. Yes. I love you too. Don't make this just about Tarak and don't make this just about me, because this is bigger. Yes, that's right. However, as much as some people want to confuse consequences with punishment, those of us who are demanding justice because we have been so badly abused by Tarak Koff will not accept the board's decision to keep him in the organization. You are going to see a lot of us leave. Thank you for listening.
Testing.
Sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I stand before you accused. No, that's the wrong. There it goes again. So sorry. I am just speechless after ceding my time to Sister Rios in wherever she is, must be in Puerto Rico. Hello, yes. Okay, my name is JJ Citizen online. I don't like to use my family name because the government already has all the facts on that. Now, I hear a lot of rhetoric. I hear a lot of talk. I hear a lot of things about anger management and you know, who's more pissed off? You know, who's more pissed off? Just a little bona fides for me. I'm Yaqui and Purepecha from the mountains of Michoacan. That's my ancestry. Now, my tribe in particular would not go on the reservation at the Pascua Reservation south of Phoenix and cede their freedom to the government and putting them on reservations. However, the Yaqui Nation is the only one that never surrendered to the U.S. government. So, I come from a long line of rebels, outlaws, whatever you want to call us, because we hid out, my ancestors hid out in the mountains of the Sierra Madres with the Tarahumaras while all the other Rockies were being put on the reservation. So I'm here because my ancestors were outlaws. So you see before you an outlaw, Yaqui, trying to address all these words about white men. All right, we got to watch this PC, this politically correct designating that divides us all. We are all of the human race, all right? Same race, all of you, no matter what color your skin is. Mine concern is, in keeping politically correct, is dissecting the rhetoric, dissecting the words that are always tossed around when we get a bunch of people pretending to be a jury. And it's my distinct honor that when I was going to the Los Angeles Unified School District, because I was born in East Los Angeles, because of the governmental relocation plan that they put in place to move all natives into urban areas and deal with the extermination process that had been started over 500 years ago by Christopher Columbus, who didn't know where the hell he was when he sailed out into the ocean blue. Or where he landed, he didn't know where the hell he was anyway. But I have not been able to dissect the English language to the point where, after listening to Sister last night, those words just flew by me because I didn't have an English language translator when I entered the Los Angeles Unified School District. We're talking about the 1940s, all right? That'll just let you know a little bit up of my age. So there was no bilingual program. So my mom said, in her own wise way, get the dictionary and start parsing the words. Start looking up what you're hearing in the classroom. Figure out what that means. So over the years, I did that. And there was always, you know, a Latin root, a French root, a German root to all these words. And the one that has stuck to me recently is the word politics, political, politicians, policy, all this stuff. So I looked it up and parsed it out, and sure enough, poly means a lot, many. And ticks are blood-sucking parasites for all of you that don't know that. Not to say that all politicians are blood-sucking parasites, but a lot of them are that I've seen, all right? Especially in this administration, guess what? Anyway, there's a book I recently heard about that those of you that might want to take note of it. It was by an author named Tim Orange. It's easy to remember that last name, Orange. Google it for all of you that have that ability. He wrote a book called There, There. There, There. And it will enlighten you to a little bit of the native culture. And I do not like to use the term white men, all right? Those of you that are descendants of the European invaders, all right? We're talking about Germans. We're talking about French. We're talking about English. We're talking about all of those that were a part of the colonization of this land known as Turtle Island. It was ours. It's been ours for thousands of years before your European ancestors decided to come over here and take everything from us. I am wrapping it up because I'm getting pissed off. I got a lot of issues. As a Native veteran, we got more issues than Veterans for Peace has issues, all right? And we all got issues. And a lot of them have to do with anger. I learned from an anger management counselor while I was in jail doing time for drug offenses, which of course we all use to self-medicate over the years. But anyway, he told me to come into this class on anger management and find out what it was about that I was so pissed off at. And he told me the definition. Write this down, he said. The definition of violence: anytime you impose your will on another living thing, you commit an act of violence. Write it down. Google it. Burn it into your psyche. Anytime you impose your own will, the ego good on the right shoulder, the evil ego maniac on the left shoulder. Keep that in mind. And as far as transgender and LGBTQ and everything in the Native community, we call these people two-spirit people. They have two spirits in them, and they are lauded, they are honored, and they are supported because they are wise. They have two spirits in their bodies. That's about it from me. Thank you and good night, gentlemen of the jury.
I got you, Susan Schnall, and then Dan Shea and Miles.
Good afternoon or good morning. I think I know some of you, not everybody. My name is Susan Schnall, and I've been working with Veterans for Peace, the original Veterans for Peace, for 50 years. My start was in the United States Navy as a nurse, taking care of those who were wounded in Southeast Asia. And I realized, please don't clap right for that. There's a story, and I'm sorry I'm not going to tell you all the whole story. But my awakening in the military was seeing the effects of the terrible violence that this government was doing on the people and on the land in Southeast Asia. We saw it on television every night. I saw it every day I went to work. I heard it from the guys I took care of. I heard their racist comments about the Vietnamese. I heard them say, you know, they don't value life as much as we do. So it's okay to go over there and kill them. And I decided that that attitude had to stop. So I'm not saying it is a gender. I'm saying it is part of this American culture that perpetuates that violence all over the world and then brings it home so that we continue to perpetuate the violence on new immigrants who are coming into this country and in communities with people of color and all over this country. And we need to stop it. We need to stop that violence. I made that decision 50 years ago, that the violence had to stop, that it wasn't enough to take care of people, but that I had to stand up to the military. And as a result of that, I had to separate myself from those forces of destruction and say no more. And I thought we would be able to bring peace and reconciliation in this country. It is so disturbing to me as somebody who has worked in this area for 50 years. I've worked with veterans for many years. I've worked with doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals in trying to heal the wounds that I feel are perpetuated by this culture and this society. When you do violence overseas and you think you have control over every nation and you can go there, it comes home. And it's come home to this country. We have seen it in all the mass shootings of innocent people all over this country. That war has come home. My concern today is that I feel that in this room. I've worked with a lot of you for years because I feel, even though I took an action 50 years ago, that I couldn't stop that war and couldn't stop the violence and couldn't stop the destruction in Vietnam and in Laos and in Cambodia. That I still have a responsibility because this is where I live, this is my government, it's our government, and we need to change it. But we also need to change ourselves. We need to understand how we can talk with each other and have a conversation with each other and deal with each other. And my goodness, none of us in this room is perfect. None of us ever gets angry or not angry. None of us yells and screams. Because what I'm hearing today is that the only person who does is Tarak. So can we look inside each one of us and say, how can we be better? How can we start with ourselves? We had a wonderful panel yesterday, and Deirdre talked about starting with herself and understanding that she needed to heal herself first before she could go and heal everybody else. And I think that's really true. My concern is that we have become, through this process, so judgmental of one person, and we can say, he's got the anger, we're going to punish him. But that means we don't have to do work on ourselves. And I would suggest to each and every one of us that we start with ourselves and say, this is how we're going to start to heal and build this organization. And we are going to have enough insight to say, I've got anger and I am pissed off, but we're going to sit down and talk about it. We started a conversation yesterday afternoon in what felt to me like a really safe place because people spoke about their feelings. And we got a number of issues out in the open. I don't want to be specific. I'd like to say that a place to start is dialogue and talking with each other. And I don't want to start by saying, aha, we're going to get one person. I hear everybody. I hear that he has had rage and outbursts, and it's been destructive. And I would just suggest to all of you that we all have it. Some of us control it better than others. And we need to help and heal rather than punish. We need to help and heal and bring people together. We are all victims in this country. We are all perpetrators in this country. We all help to create this society that continues to perpetuate violence.
Right.
And I can only say to you, which I have apologized for numerous times to people in Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia. My government did this and I didn't stop it. But by perpetuating that same attitude, we continue that process. So I would suggest that we have, and you remember Bishop Tutu with peace and reconciliation. And I think we need to start there. And let me just tell you, as somebody who has worked in the veterans movement, I know about male arrogance and hubris and control and trying for them to overspeak me. But we need to continue. If we're going to continue as an organization, we need to reconcile with each other. And that means everybody needs to reconcile. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Susan. Okay, I got Dan, and Dan's passing. Miles, are you here? You're up, Miles.
Thank you, Miles, for letting me jump in and standing here with me as well. I have so much admiration and respect for you, Susan. And I feel compelled to speak to the way that you just characterized the conversation that happened yesterday, because I really disagree. I do not feel that people spoke up because it was a safe space. In fact, I had to leave that space shaking with rage in order to be able to control myself and engage with people in a way that was respectful. And so, because I have had a lifetime, and it hasn't even been that long of a lifetime, but I've had a lifetime of having to be the bigger person, of having to be able to navigate the rage, because I know that I don't get to have rage in these spaces. The moment I have rage, I'm unstable. I'm not capable of leadership. I'm all of these things, right? And so I don't get that. And so people didn't speak up because it was a safe space. People spoke up because Deidre had the courage to speak in contradiction to a conversation that was in contradiction with her experience. Not to say that the person who shared a different experience, was wrong or anything, but she had the courage to speak up and say, that was not my experience at all as a black woman in this movement early on when I was riding around in my car. It's not my story to tell. But anyway, she opened up that conversation, and that conversation wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the courage of a black woman in that room to speak up. And she took a risk in doing that, and she shared a piece of herself in doing that, and that created the space for a conversation. And then when I spoke up, literally, to give examples about what I was talking about when I talked about toxicity in the anti-war movement, to give examples of being consistently dismissed, being disrespected directly, cut off, all of these things that happen. Someone decided to say that, essentially in summary, that was the problem, that we needed to stop focusing on fixing the movement and focus on the work that we're trying to do. And the like audacity and the obliviousness of saying that in response to what I was the examples I was just giving was just floored me. And so I spoke to that. And I'm not going to speak to that again because I think that my sisters and brothers up here have already done that. But I just want to clarify that us having the courage to meet you with the problems that you're perpetuating is not an attack. It's not punishment. It's not any of those things. That's love. And when y'all are like, we just need love and healing, that's what we're doing. Talking about the wound is necessary in order for us to heal it. And Monique is back here saying we cannot heal if we don't address the harm. And I'm not saying we should have a punishing culture. But y'all are taking the word punishing and you're acting like we're saying Tarak should be turned into the police and locked up. No one's suggesting that. And I hardly even know what people are suggesting, to be honest. But like, I just need to speak to the fact that like that is an inaccurate conflation, and we need to be nuanced in our engagement with these issues. And it is not punishment to say that you are harming members of our community and you need to stop. And if you're not willing to be accountable to that, then you can't be in our community until you are. And when you're ready to address that, then you can come back with open arms. But you've got to address it. And we're here to address it with you. And if you're not willing to address it, sorry, you can't be here. And it's also not punishing to say, not only, you can't be a leader in our movement until you have the competencies that are necessary to lead and build the type of movement that we need in order to win. And if you do not have the competency to treat women and people with respect, then you are not competent to lead a movement that is building a world that respects people's humanity. That is a leadership competency that you lack, that you need to develop. It doesn't mean we hate you. It doesn't mean we're attacking you. You need to develop yourself. And we need to have standards for leadership. Otherwise, we're just gonna keep fucking standing on street corners and having conferences, and we're not gonna move shit because our shit is the shit we're trying to tear down.
Okay.
Put Adrian on stack.
You hear that? Do you hear Monisha? Put Adrian on stack. Monisha, you are heard. You are seen. We hear you. You can intellectualize what I say after I'm done if you choose to. I might not speak in a way that you're used to, but right now I'm going to speak truth to power. I don't normally put myself in these situations because I know COINTELPRO is real. People ask me why it took me so long after leaving the military to find Veterans for Peace. A lot of you think you know who I am. My name is Miles Megacyph. It rhymes with life, big circles of influence, big cipher. Mental energies gather and circulate in positive harmony. Did years of introspection and self-healing after getting out the military to turn from Cyph into Megacyph. I was already rapping, but the military brought a killer instinct out of me that my mother never harnessed. I was raised without a father. I'm a bastard, and I love it. I'm a bastard, but you a bitch. So what you talking about? Can we switch? If you get offended by my words, you need a switch. I could beat you with the truth. Dig your own ditch. If it kills you, what's the use? This is how I speak to my youth. This is how I speak to my youth. I have a son who's about to be 7. I have a son who's about to be 4. I am brutally honest with them. I'm not brutal with them. The healing that I thought I had done and completed in my life that made me think I was able as a man to raise children, led me to have children. Raising my children made me realize I could be their villain. So I decided I had to write something, and I wrote an album that made me find y'all, old white men, with a massive footprint on the internet that made me say, this is a place to work an album that isn't lost in the wind, because that's what my wife said to me after I wrote Civil I Am in 12 days. That's the album that introduced me to y'all in Asheville, North Carolina. It was Casey Steinmetz and Michael McPherson that listened to it and accepted it and said, yeah, we like this, bring it forward. So I started bringing it forward. You know, I'm sharing really aggressive rap songs. I'm from Brooklyn. I'm sharing really aggressive versions of the political truth that I've grown up living with my perceived enemy, who I'm trying to accept. And one of the first songs I share is Am I Next? And in Am I Next, I turn into a caricature in the song, because that's what you have to do in music to move emotion. And one of the first comments on this song is this the type of shit we're promoting now? Because of a lyric about I touch myself and your wife masturbates. Well, I don't touch myself. Did you see me touch my genitalia yesterday? No, but that's what rappers do. If you don't know about hip hop and the misogynation, the feminization of our black masculine men who have to take off their shirts and put on baby oil and sexualize themselves to be safe in your white patriarchal society. See, why I don't speak is because I know COINTELPRO is true, and so I don't put myself forth like I did in Okinawa. I'm just gonna jump right to it, because now you might know a little better who I am. In fight or flight, I don't ever run. So before I got arrested on that delegation, that was my first time back to Okinawa after having been stationed there in 1994, 1995. And so when I was there as a civilian, 17, I don't know, years later, 19 years later, more than that, 21 years later, right? I'm overwhelmed emotionally. And so seeing the power of the Okinawan movement empowered me. Standing with Tarak empowered me. Standing with Monisha Rios empowered me and empowers me now to put myself forward and speak politically along with my music and share my thoughts and feelings and emotions with young veterans. Something that I had done as some anti-recruitment, some recruitment resistance awareness training, but never on a political scale. And so doing this made me really feel empowered. When the action happened and I was arrested, if you see the video Nuchi Du Takara, at the end of that struggle, at the end of that video, there's a struggle where I'm struggling with the officers, and it's because of in the moment planning and reaction and me doing something that I hadn't pre-planned, right? And being a fight or flight, a fighter type of guy, I threw myself under a construction vehicle, okay? And I grabbed onto the axle of it, and because of that, they charged me with obstruction of justice, and because of that, I was arrested. Before I was arrested, the 2.5, 3 days that the delegation had been there were beautiful. Flowing energy, no conflicts, no reason for anything to be resolved. Everything was going well from my perception. I think there were already some things happening. There were already some people not being pulled forward to speak. And I think that's where it comes. That's where, that was the patriarchal approach to working in Okinawa. And when I got arrested, emotions came to they burst out, and so there was a conflict, and now our leader didn't resolve the conflict. And I wasn't gonna speak on it because nobody was there. Y'all weren't there. Y'all heard about it from somebody who've you known for years. So of course you're gonna do what you're gonna do, because we take alliances, we're humans, we're herd animals, you know what I'm saying? We follow the leader. No matter how dope something is, nobody wants to mess with it until it's made some moves or made some money for somebody. And y'all know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm saying? So, no matter how good an idea is, until you that, I mean, like Jay-Z working with the NFL after demonizing them. Come on, you know what I'm saying? So I come out, and the energy on the bus after my pickup was mad depressing and heartful. You know what I'm saying? I had missed a day and a half. I had missed an action I really wanted to be a part of, and I couldn't understand what was going on, so I started asking, and then people tell me, oh, well, this is what happened. And I'm like, yo, come on, man. You know, this is not what we're here for. So I just wanted to share that with y'all, and that's the reason that we don't share, is because, you know, neoliberal thought in this movement doesn't help us feel safe. So, you know, don't. I was asked at my second year, I went to Asheville in San Diego. Nobody knew who I was. I was asked to be on the board as well. I've been asked constantly to be on the board, and I've constantly turned it down because I'm nobody's fucking token. Never. You know what I'm saying? If I make a choice to run for the board or to be on the board, it's only because you know it's about to be a fucking power movement.
As we guarded confidentiality during this process, it made regular help, regular personal help, impossible from y'all. It was not available because we were holding confidentiality to Tarak and to the people involved. And what a lot of you have done is assumed we didn't do our work because you didn't hear about it. And there have been people who assumed we were making something big out of something small. And one thing I have learned in the process of talking to people about this stuff is every single time I have talked to a new person, I have discovered more stuff either about Tarak or about somebody else, one more VFP problem that needs to be fixed. When Tarak stepped down because of the aftermath of the Okinawa stuff, pardon me for my vocabulary coming in and out, I was the one that was asked to step up to the board. And I would like to speak for the board itself. What I found was the board was so emotionally raw, I could barely get any details about what had happened that caused the vacancy that I was tasked with filling. The board of 2018, which is last year, of that board there are 4 members still present on the board. Think about the impact that has had on how we function. Think about how the effect that has had on how we carry information from one board to the next. Somebody along the line had structured this so that we would have an fair and reasoned rotation to always keep some elder knowledge, board knowledge from cycle to cycle to cycle. And we have lost that structure because of this, and we're having to build it up again. I would like to speak for the effect on the new members of the board 2019. We had an extraordinary amount of new members because some of the people from the last one chose not to run, some quit, some had medical conditions that they needed to deal with. And the new members came on the board going, what? Where's the stuff? Where's the documentation? What does this mean? What are the stories? And we didn't have it all. I myself didn't find out what happened to the membership committee until sometime this spring. I didn't know Tarak had been the chair of the membership committee. I didn't know that's why everything was going through the executive committee, because they picked up the slack when the person that they were dealing with was the head of the membership committee. And I just need to say that because it may not occur to some of you that the problems were that bad. And then I have to speak for the board members who had been with this process from before I got on the board. They have had to go over this cycle by cycle, email by old email, by who did what, and it has been almost impossible to handle this without having some kind of a mental freeze because of the emotional content, because of all the different efforts and all the different things that needed to be followed. And to credit the 4 remaining board members, they have had to suffer through every time a new board member came on board and needed it explained again and again. Because I was one cycle and there were more cycles of again. And they did their best with that part. Now, I want to say for me, some of the effects of this process, because I have been committed to healing the in-house issues. That's why I came on the board, is because of an in-house problem, and I took that as a sign that that's my job. Some of the effects on me that I don't usually talk about, but I have been at risk for hospitalization at least twice. I have medically endangered myself through lack of sleep because I have spent that time doing the emails, doing the I'm so confused, please tell it to me again stuff. When I've gotten so confused, I have to go over and over again. So some of it has been supporting other board members as they're having these reactions. We had a board member this year step off the board because he was medically at risk. We've had board members who've had to ramp up their medications just to continue to do the work that they have to do because of the stress of this. Just about every board member, and excuse me, I can't do the inventory right now, but I think I can say every board member has in some way indicated to me that this is too much. I'm thinking about leaving. This process is too much. And the no help and the attacks against us while we tried to do this work that you elected us to do has been extreme. And so that's this part of it, is I want to speak for the effects it's had on the board here and the members of the board who have had to step away from the board. That's it.
Gusuyo Haisei, aloha mai kako. As you heard, I'm Pete Shimazaki, doctor. The last name is doctor. Granted, I was a medic, but that's not why. I have some notes because I promise to keep this brief. Okay. I'm a product of war of Okinawa. My father, Marine, 27 years, he was in the Battle of Okinawa, and he still sees dead people under his bed. And my mother was one of the many civilians hiding in the caves. So like many, PTSD runs on both sides of the family. This is my first convention. Whether it's the last depends on how this moves forward, if it does. I was on that was my first delegation, and whether that's my last, that also, it was my only delegation. I was among the injured party. And let's just mindful, it wasn't just about Tarak, but there was some white privilege that enabled that. And so people aren't just so stuck on the word of a whiteness. Just a reminder that there's such a thing as Japanese privilege, Chinese privilege, and other places that are colonized, okay? So, that we got that out of the way. But I felt some re-injury this weekend when I found out that our sister, Monisha, was basically called a liar by some people, right? And that was a re-injury to me, because that's telling me, oh, you're a liar too. You didn't witness that. That didn't happen. No, Jerry said something very powerful at the beginning, it was today or one of the plenaries, that he said the future of VFP will depend on the inclusion of women, people of color, indigenous peoples, sexual minorities, other groups. But I have to remind you that their future is just an abstract concept. All we have is now, this present moment. So the future is here right now. And so this is, and forgive me, I don't mean to appropriate other related issues, but this is a Me Too moment for a VFP. And you know, on that note, you've heard about the predator Epstein. That this was not just an individual issue, but there's concern about the systematic enablement of that, and this is what we're addressing here today. So I was really touched to hear about the sensitivity when Hawaii was brought up, about getting invites and so forth. And I have to tell you, it's true, that delegation was embarrassment. And I was like, oh, you gotta like check some shit before you come Hawaii. You know, like if some of that stuff would not be tolerated, nor should it be. So I think this is more than about an issue of resolution, but this is an issue of change. You know what I'm saying? You know, Epstein didn't get a mediator. And so I just want to close by saying, you know, there's lots of anger all over the place here, and I hope this is an opportunity to transform that anger into real change. Mahalo nui loa. Ipene he deburu.